Hello, all. This is Zan Y, and you are listening or watching the Bible reading series. We'll be in Genesis 26 today. And if you haven't watched the first video for at least the disclaimer, please do so. But we'll start with the Lord's Prayer here. Matthew 6, 9 through 13, King James Version. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Genesis 26, King James Version. Header here is Yitzhak settles in Gerar. And there was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Yitzhak went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And Yitzhak dwelt in Gerar. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister, for he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw, and behold, Yitzhak was sporting with Rebekah, his wife. And Abimelech called Yitzhak and said, Behold, of a surety she is thy wife, and how saidst thou, She is my sister? And Yitzhak said unto him, Because I said, Lest I die for her. And Abimelech said, What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Then Yitzhak sowed in that land, and received in the same year an 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great, and went forward, and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks, and possession of herds, and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them, and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Yitzhak, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. And Yitzhak departed thence, and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar, and dwelt there. Quarrel over the wells. And Yitzhak digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Yitzhak's servants digged in the valley, and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Yitzhak's herdmen, saying, The water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they digged another well, and strove for that also, and he called the name of it Sitnah. And he removed from thence, and digged another well, and for that they strove not, and he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, For now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And he went up from thence to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there, and there Yitzhak's servants digged a well, and covenant with Abimelech. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Hazeth, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Yitzhak said unto them, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? And they said, We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. And we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no harm, no hurt, as we have not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord. And he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning. swear one to another, and Yitzhak sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Yitzhak's servants came and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, We have found water. And he called it Shiva. Therefore the name of the city is Beer Shiva unto this day. And Esav was 40 years old when he took his to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemat, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which was a grief of mind unto Yitzhak and to Rebekah. That ends the reading portion of Genesis 26. This is a three-parter, slightly. In fact, this is a familiar story if you've been watching. Chapter 21. We get a similar event here. This is, in fact, I believe, when Yitzhak is born here. And there's a quarrel between Hagar and Sarah in that chapter, but at the very end, Abimelech and Phicol, same two, spoke unto Abraham, and they made a covenant. In fact, during the covenant, the whole name of Beersheba is the seven covenants. And in this period, what happens is Abimelech comes to him and says, "Hey, we want to deal well with each other. You don't deal falsely with me, nor with my son or my son's sons. So there won't be lying, right?" And Abraham makes this agreement, but he says, but this well over here, your servants have taken it, violently. Abimelech goes, "I don't know about that. That's not my problem." And so he's making a case that it's not his fault. So this moves on. Abraham and him make a covenant, and then there are 7 ewe lambs that Abraham gives to Abimelech. That's hence the name. However, we see here again, there's a famine in the land, which happened with Abraham as well, which Abraham goes down to Egypt, where God says to Yitzhak, "Don't go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land that I will show you." And so he does. He blesses him. However, something happened. Something happened with the wells. Why is Yitzhak redigging these wells? Well, it's because the Philistines went in and covered the wells. So this whole my son and my son's sons isn't quite honest with his word, I guess, if I have this correctly. So these wells are covered over. Yitzhak is now out there with his people, his herds, and they need water. And so they say, "All right, we're going to dig up wells." Well, one of the reasons why, assumably, the Philistines covered the wells was because enemies will come in and they'll want these waters. Well, what was really happening, at least here and between Abraham and Yitzhak, was that the Philistines were taking the wells. They if you come down here to the quarrel of wells, 18 to, excuse me, my phone. I'm going to mute that real quick so that it doesn't keep going off. So down here, he makes one well, and they take it. So he goes to another area, and he makes another one, and then they take it again. And so then he goes on to make another well, and they don't take it. So he calls it this name, Rehoboth, which I think it's definitely in the wide places of streets. Yeah, I might be thinking of something else. Anyways, so he goes to this place, and the Lord multiplies him. In fact, he multiplies him 100-fold during this time frame. And Abimelech sees this. He comes down, and in the Masoretic here, it says Gerar. Well, Abimelech went to him, and Ahuzath and Phicol went with him. However, in the Septuagint here, I think 26. Let's see. Abimelech went to him from Gerar and a group of his companions, and Phicol, his general. So, I'm not exactly sure who that is, so I'm going to look at that word real quick here. Possession, a friend of Abimelech. So, yeah, I guess he could go down with, 3 people, or there might have been a group of people. Doesn't change a whole lot, except for maybe one could be perceived as individuals coming to make war with somebody else. And Yitzhak responds here, and he's like, "You hate me. You sent me away. Your people are taking my wells." He doesn't say that directly, but and then Abimelech does the same thing he did with Abraham. He's like, "Hey, let's make a covenant betwixt you and me, and there will be peace between us because we haven't touched thee, except for you've been taking the wells." Maybe not directly. He might have, did his in the. Here he says, where does it say it? Because it's at, "I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today." Very confusing way to write. Basically, I don't know what's going on. I had no idea until you said something. But let me get back to here. So he wants to make peace. So Yitzhak says, "Sure." And then finally we get to this ending of it, and it's essentially his brother. His son Esau was 40 years old. Excuse me, not his son, or his brother. Yitzhak's son, Esau, was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemat, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So it caps the very end with this. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that's kind of an overview. Essentially, a small story of tribal individuals. God says, "Don't go down to a place." He stays in Gerar with the Philistines, which would seem counter, actually. If I want to kind of pull a moral out of the story here, is sometimes the place that seems the hardest is the place that God is calling us to. But He'll provide a way. Even amongst our enemies, He will provide a way, and that's kind of a motif that goes on throughout the Bible as well. But it's not as if it's without its troubles and toils that He comes across, and yeah. So we'll get to the commentary here. Verse 2, "And the Lord appeared to him and said, Do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land that I will tell you." So do not go down to Egypt, for he had in mind to go down to Egypt as his father had gone down in the days of the famine. He, God, said to him, "Do not go down to Egypt. You are as a perfect burnt offering. Being outside the Holy Land is not fit for you." So there's this concept that Yitzhak is this perfect burnt offering. Conceptually, he is that, and so therefore moving outside of the land would cause him to become unclean. It's kind of a reading off of some of the law that comes out post this, and then it moves on. So this is just a grammatical thing of these. For to you and to your seed will I give all these lands. So these it's just ensuring grammar in my understanding. Could be something more, but I'm just going to pass it on here because there's a bit to get through. And I will multiply your seeds like the stars of heavens, and I'll give your seed all these lands, and all the nations of the earth will bless themselves by your seed. And they will bless themselves by your seed. A man tells his son, may your children be like the children of Yitzhak. And the same in all of Scripture, and the following is the archetype of all, 48:20. Through you shall Israel bless, saying, may God see you as Ephraim and Manasseh. We also found with regards to the curse. So then it goes into this, it refers to Numbers 5:27. And in that is a good bit of the law, and it's prescribing a way to deal with someone who isn't faithful to their husband. And we'll get there at one point. Hopefully I'll be wise enough at that point to understand how to interpret what's going on, because it's quite extreme. So you may be like that particular woman. So there's a curse that happens in this. But that's reading into this. So there's a cursing and a blessing that's going on. That's said in verse 4 here. And I will multiply your seed like the stars of heaven, and I will give your seed all these lands, and all the nations of the earth will bless themselves by your seed. So I guess there's a much more that we could pick apart with that, about how if there is infidelity, I guess, that there will be a curse, but it's kind of implied. But moving on. Because Abraham hearkened to my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my instructions. So Abraham, apparently this hearkened to my voice is when I tested him. They look at it as there were, I think there was 10 tests that Abraham went through, that the Lord put him through, and kept my charge, referring to decrees to distance himself from transgressing the warnings in the Torah, secondary prohibitions to prevent incest from occurring, and the rabbinic decrees to safeguard the prohibitions of the Sabbath. This is, so Moses wrote this, our understanding is that Moses wrote Genesis, technically the Torah, which found out through this reading that they perceive the Torah as technically 7 books if you look at Numbers as 3 books. There's a little bit of argumentation about that inside of the Rabbah. He kept my charge, referring to decrees to distance himself from transgressing the warnings in the Torah. Secondary prohibitions did. I already read that. My commandments, referring to things which had they not been written, would have been fit to be commanded. Prohibitions against robbery and bloodshed. So this is interesting because the flood is in reference to robbery or ill-gotten gain. And then post that, there is what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah, and I believe there is some violence that goes on with that. But my statutes, referring to things that the evil inclination of the nations of the world argue against. This is in regards to wearing wool and linen together and eating pork. So for which no reason is given, but which are the decree of the king and his statutes over his subjects. And my instructions to include the oral law, the laws given to Moses from Mount Sinai. Reading it that way is a little post hoc, in my opinion. We're coming to the reading and thinking that Abraham was following the Mosaic law. Maybe there was something that was lost, and then in Egypt they had to rediscover it or something. It's hard for me to come to that conclusion, but I do think that there was Abraham followed the law because his heart was aligned with God. Would be kind of more of the way that I perceive this statement here, but. Remembering that this is written by Moses, Moses may be referring to the law, the oral law. So just things to think about. And the men of the place asked about his wife, and he said, "She is my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She is my wife," because he said, "Lest the man of the place kill me because of Ribkah, for she is of comely appearance," about his wife. literally to his wife, about his wife, above 2013, say about me, he is my brother. We see a reoccurring event. Yitzhak is doing what Abraham did when he went to Egypt and with Abimelech, which later on Abimelech chastises him kind of for it. And it came to pass when he had been there for many days that Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, looked out of the window, and he saw, and behold, Yitzhak was jesting with Rebekah. So this jesting, when reading the Rabbah 64:5, it's the word they use is playing, but it is marital relations. Let's see if I can find 6 real quick here. Okay, it's not in that. I know I read it. Instead of me, trying to rummage around here. Anyways, the concept, and it makes sense. The words there are inferring that there was something going on in the daytime that Abimelech saw Yitzhak engaging with Rebekah and knew. So it was blatant. When he had been there for many days, he said to himself, "From now on, I need not worry, since they have not violated her until now, and he did not take precautions to beware." Sure. I could see him becoming a little bit more and more day by day less concerned. But this is it's playing out almost identical, and so it's not like Abimelech completely forgot what happened with him and Sarah. So he called out Isaac and he said, "Behold, she is your wife. So how could you have said she is my sister?" And Yitzhak said to him, "Because I said, lest I die because of her." And Abimelech said, "What have you done to us? The most prominent of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So referring back to what happened with Abraham and him, the most prominent of the people, meaning the king, and you would have brought guilt upon us. He had relations. You would have brought guilt upon us. One thing, I was doing some historical research, listening to somebody talk about what Pharaoh actually means in ancient Egypt, and it wasn't entirely an individual. So I'm curious if Abimelech may have been something similar, and so the prominent one of the people is saying that he was the richest of the people. He was the most prominent, as it says, and the way that we refer to that is as king, but it may not have been an entire monarchy the way that we would think. So just something to add on to who Abimelech may have been. We reference as king, but it may not be exactly the way that we think it would have come about. So Yitzhak sowed in that land, and he found that year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. Even though it was not considered, so in that land, even though it was not considered as esteemed as the land of Israel itself, as the land of the 7 nations. In that year, even though it was not as it should have been, for it was a year of famine. And in that land, in that year, why both of them, to tell us that the land was hard, and that year was a hard one. 100-fold, for they had estimated how much the land was fit to produce, and it produced for each measure that they had estimated 100 measures. And our rabbi said that the purpose of this estimate was for tithing. So going backwards here, 100-fold is in reference to the fact that they would have measured it out to ensure that they gave tithe, assumably here, was for tithing. That's possible. If I went really, really literal, it's just they were trying to keep track of their produce in that land in that year. So yes, this time was a hard one. God told Yitzhak to stay in a land that was not producing, and that he was going to care for him. Which comes to another point. And the man became great, and he grew constantly greater until he had grown very great. He had grown very great, for they would say, rather than the manure of Yitzhak's mules, than Abimelech's silver and gold. Yeah, because I mean, at the time, if it's a famine, a mule's manure would have been valuable to get things to grow. So that would be understandable. But I think it's also referencing the fact that he was so wealthy that even the fact that the manure was of greater value than the greatest value of Abimelech. Which, if we take what I was trying to say about Pharaoh, that Abimelech may not exactly be who we think he was. He was just like the highest person, the most valuable person in the Philistine area, especially since I could be wrong about this, but if we look up what Philistine means, I think it's like a traveling people is what it means. So, immigrants, yeah. An inhabitant of Philistia, descendants of Mizraim, who immigrated from Caphtor or Crete to the western seacoast of Canaan. So yeah, they're foreigners in this land, and they had traveled there. So, moving to, and he had possessions of sheep and possessions of cattle and much production. Philistines envied him, and this is my point. So he goes into a land that isn't profitable. These individuals have already been kind of hurt by Abraham lying about his wife Sarah. He comes in, does the same exact thing, in a land where there was an agreement made to not lie to each other, does the same thing. The wells are covered over, possibly before, maybe during, unsure about that. But then the Lord decides to bless him. And he blesses him 100-fold. So if you just imagined, one day your bank account had 100 times what you normally get in it. And that may actually be like a poor example. It'd be more like a year's worth of labor. So your entire income was multiplied 100-fold. And then somebody looks at it and goes, well, that's not fair. Which happens now. There are people that are going to look upon the blessings of God on a person who follows God and be jealous of that thing. So Philistines envied him. In our day and age, it would be akin to someone blaming Christians for being capitalists and profiteering while the others starve. Would be a good example of this. Not to say that that's happening, but the point is, sometimes the blessings that God gives us, others will be envious of. And they'll call it multiple things. Moving on from that, this was an interesting part, at least minorly, but this and it says much production here. So verse 14, move here, and great store of servants and possession of herds and of great store of servants. It doesn't say much production. It actually, this and is the word that is being translated here in the King James Version. Anyways, and all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, the Philistines stopped them up and filled them with earth. Philistines stopped them up because they said, they are a danger to us due to the armies that will come upon us. An expression of stopping up in the language of the Talmud, stops up the heart. So these were plugged up. These wells were plugged. In a very, very literal sense. It's interesting that they're going into a time of famine and they've plugged up the very thing that provides water. Curious. And Yitzhak went away from there, and he encamped in the valley of Gerar, and dwelt there. So in the valley is meaning far from the city, I guess. And Yitzhak again dug the wells of water, which they had dug in the days of his father, Abraham. And the Philistines had stopped them up after Abraham's death, and he gave them names like the names that his father had given them. So Yitzhak again dug, meaning the wells that they had dug in the days of his father, Abraham. And the Philistines had stopped up before Yitzhak traveled from Gerar. He went back and dug them. So just reopening the wells of water in the land. And the shepherds of Gerar quarreled with Yitzhak's shepherds, saying, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek because they contended with him. Esek, contention. I don't even know if that language is. And the herdmen, they strove with Yitzhak's herdmen, saying the water is ours, and he called them the name of the well Esek because they strove with him. Wording is a little bit got a little close to the mic. A little different, but because they had contended, they engaged with him about it with strife and contention. Assumably they were like, give us the water. I mean, how dare you hoard all the water? And they dug another well, and they quarreled about it also, so he named it Sitnah, which is to harm, wrong, or injure. And he moved away from there, and he dug another well. They did not quarrel over it, so he named it Rehoboth. And he said, "For now the Lord had made room for us, and we will be fruitful in the land." That's what it is. So this is like many streets, or like the metaphor is that God has created this place to be a large city, I guess, and fruitful. So. And Abimelech went to him from Gerar and a group of his companions, Phicol, his general. And I mentioned that this and a group of companions isn't a person. And in fact, this commentary here, some interpret the word, the mem is part of the root of the word, like in Jude 14:11, 30 companions of Samson, in order that the word should be in construct state. The group of his friends, however, it is not polite to speak of royalty in this manner, i.e. his group of companions, because this would imply that he brought his entire group of companions, that he only had one group of companions. Therefore, it should be interpreted in the previous manner. It is not construct, and do not be puzzled about the letter Thav. Although the word is not in the construct state, there are similar cases in Scripture. Psalm 60:13, help against the adversary, drunk, but not from wine. So the reason why it's written this way is because it would be offensive to say something about royalty in a way of saying his only friends. Now, would be kind of like, you don't have very many friends, is essentially why it's worded that way. But it's interesting to me that in the Septuagint, it says a group of companions instead of one individual. A group, an expression of gathering or a band of people who are held together. So even here, it's just different. I don't think that this ruins it, but in my head, utilizing this word, one of his friends, this phrase leads one to believe that it's just three individuals, whereas like in the Septuagint, there's a band of people coming to Yitzhak. And so now in my head, I'm like, oh, this could be perceived as an aggression. And they said, "We've seen that the Lord was with you." So we said, "Let there now be an oath between us, between ourselves and you, and let us form a covenant with you." Once again, we're rehashing old things. They said, "We have seen," which is interesting because the phrasing here is a double expression, meaning we saw it regarding your father, we saw it regarding you. So we have seen the Lord was with you and your father would probably be a little bit better way to say it, but it's implying that they knew. It's obvious that they knew about Abraham, so it's not like they forgot this this oath that they made, or covenant. So we said, "Let there be an oath between us, between ourselves and you, and let us form a covenant with you. Let the oath that has existed between us from the days of your father be now also between us and you." So something happened where the covenant was released, I guess, or not upheld would be a better way to say it. For you do not harm us, as we have not touched you, and as we have done with you only good, and we sent you away in peace. So do you now, blessed of the Lord. We have not touched you when we said to you, go away from us. So they didn't intentionally, start a fight. You too, other addition, now to do us likewise. So just an exchange. They had a feast, and then he prepares this, and then and he named it Shiva. Therefore, the city named Be'er Shiva until this very day because of the covenant, Shivu, and Hebrew means oath. So they reenact the covenant. And then finally, it almost seems like pig-ear legislation, just like at the final piece here. Esau was 40 years old, and he married Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemat, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So he marries two women. Yeah, I believe so. All right. This is so I guess on the 40 years, it is compared to swine, as it is said in Psalms 80:14. The boar from the forest gnaws at it. The swine, when it lies down, stretches out its hooves as if to say, see, I am clean, kosher animal. So do these, the chiefs of Esau, rob and plunder, then pretend to be honorable. During the entire 40 years, Esau kidnapped wives from their husbands and violated them. When he was 40 years old, he said, my father married at 40. I too will do the same. I guess there's like some hidden meaning to this as well, implying Rome and what happened between the Jews and Rome in ancient Roman history. Until I see otherwise, I don't see how I can read into the fact. I mean, I read the Rava 65:1, and they were vexed of spirit. Isaac and Rebekah, his mom and dad, are vexed because of this rebellion. All their deeds were to provoke and to grieve. To Yitzhak and to Rebekah, they worshipped idols. Idol worship's big in a lot of this, but this here, Judith, is priestess, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check here. Yehudith, Jewess or praised. Maybe I had that wrong. Yeah. So that means Jewess or praised. So the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, the wife of Esau. Beeri, my well. So the Hittite, and Basemat means spice, but the Hittite, the second wife of Esau, daughter of Ishmael, sister of. So this right here is probably a little bit more important, I guess, because that is the daughter of Yitzhak's other brother from Hagar. So that might have created some consternation, I guess, maybe. And then Elon, which is Terebinth or mighty, the Hittite father-in-law of Esau, second son of Zebulun, judge of Israel. So here, Elon is another Hittite. So something that, if I remember correctly, Abraham was kind of a bit against, was being married to Hittites, which were a grief of mind unto Yitzhak and Rebekah. It's very interesting that it ends with this. To me, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it was just we'll see in the following chapter. Maybe it's just a hard place to put it. But, yeah. Anyways, hopefully, I know that I didn't really give like much of an answer on the Esav portion here. except for I'm not sure if I agree with this entirety until I see otherwise, that was what was going on outside of the fact that he is married to Hittite women, and if I'm not mistaken, that was kind of frowned upon by his grandfather. But Rebekah did grow up in a house of idol worship, if we want to look at Laban and the rest of the family, and read into it as such. So there is that possibility as well. There is also another, whole other side of this in which they see Yitzhak as holy and Rebekah as not holy because of their lineage, which I don't personally agree with. But hopefully this was good. Hopefully this gives you a little bit to think about, maybe as you go through your day. Maybe it gives a little bit of a different perspective to chapter 26. But this ends the video. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Hope to see you next time.